All right, so I thought I would show you a little bit around the actual Rig Manager program and a couple of tips that make it a little bit easier potentially to manage your profiles. So once you start up Rig Manager, uh, if you have your Kemper connected, it'll show right here. And I usually don't store a whole lot of profiles on my actual device. I don't take it out of my studio. I don't use it for anything else other than just to record with. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to store a lot on here. It makes it a lot easier to manage with less on, and it boots up a little bit quicker, I think. So I will typically name all of my profiles with a number in front of them. It makes it a lot easier to manage and sort them. So you could sort them by name just by clicking on these columns, and that way you can keep track of what's what. The only ones I didn't put a number in are these ones that I've captured off my EVH. I could put them in the 4,000 range to put them at the bottom, or I could put them anywhere in the middle here. That way if I want to arrange them in a certain order, it's numerical. It makes it easier to kind of keep track of them. So these are the profiles that are on the physical device. This folder here is your local library. So think of that as like a file explorer or a file manager on your computer. And you can create folders under here by right clicking, and you can manage and keep track of all the profiles that you would obtain. I'll put a folder up here at the top and put an underscore in front of it to keep it at the top. And generally what I'll do is I will make two folders, one that says current profiler and another one that's profiler load. And these I just use to literally copy everything off of my profiler and store them on the computer, and then I back that up. So if I were to ever get a new Kemper or want to use somebody else's or whatever, I always have all the profiles that were on my device saved in one of these folders. So managing these profiles is extremely easy. So you can go into one of these folders on your local library. You can select all these by just doing a shift click. It works just like a file explorer. You can hit Control A. And so I'm going to delete all these and copy the ones off my Kemper over to here. I don't know what the number difference is. I probably have one over here that I made for some reason and deleted out of the profiler, but just to give you an idea how you can do this. So you can literally select all these, edit, delete rigs. You'll get a warning. So I just deleted all those off my computer. Come over here to my profiler, Control A, copy, come down to this folder, paste, and now I have a backup of my entire profiler saved on my computer. So I could do the same thing to this one, Control A, delete, and this is just an extra copy. Control A, copy, paste. There you go. It's literally that easy. Then you can, this would be like all the profiles that you either download or obtain off the internet, whatever. I just put them in folders based on the AMP name, and it just makes it easier for me. You can do whatever you want. The other thing is, if you want to rename or change the name of a profile, you literally just click on the name on the profile that you want to name or change, and then you come over here and you can change the name, you can change the author, whatever instrument it was used. Same thing on the cabs, right? It's super easy to change all this stuff, and then those will update in the list here. And you literally have all these different kinds of headers that you can add. So it's real easy to manage the names and manage the profiles. But I like to have a backup of whatever's on my actual profiler. And the really cool thing about the Kemper is the management of the files is incredibly easy to use. So if you want to back up your entire rig library, so all of the profiles that you have downloaded or created and stored on your computer, these are the rig packs that come with the Kemper. I just copied them over there. And then these presets, and I won't even get into that right now, but if you want to back all this stuff up, You just go Tools, Backup Rig Manager Content, and you can see I make backups all the time. Look at these file sizes. This is the fantastic thing about the Kemper. All of these profiles and the entire backup of all the Rig Manager content is teeny tiny file management, file size wise. So hit save right there, and now you've literally saved everything that's in this local library. And that's exactly why I make backups of the device to the computer. Because at any time, if I were to get a new Kemper, or take that Rig Manager file, that backup file, this file, I could take any one of these files and load it onto anybody's Kemper, and you'd have all their content, all their settings, everything. And that's just as easy as loading up Rig Manager, restore Rig Manager content, point it at one of these backups, and it'll restore everything that's in this local library. So it's really powerful and easy to use. And it works just like a file explorer. So the other really cool thing here is that if you want to audition or play one of these, you just double click on the profile and it loads it to the device. So you might notice here that I have all these little locks enabled on the different blocks on the Kemper. And that is my favorite thing about the Kemper, period, is that you can put in whatever kind of effect you want. And you can do this using the physical lock button on the device. You hold that lock button in, and then you just push on the physical buttons on the device to lock them, or you can unlock them and lock them by using this little lock button. And then any one of these blocks that you've created, like if you really like the sound of a reverb and a delay, and you got a noise gate and a drive that you really like, and you want to use that on any profile at any time, you just lock all these things. And then no matter what profile you load, it will use those effects. And the powerful thing of that is with the cabinet, with the IR. So you might notice here, like all the profiles on my profiler all have the exact same cabinet. And that's because I finally found one that I really like. And I think it sounds good on just about any amp that I use. And I just saved it to all these profiles. But you can look here at, let's look at this Bogner Ecstasy one that's saved on the in my computer. So that's the kind of the reason why I think people don't really care for the Kemper when they first start listening to it. It's because you're listening to somebody else's either IR or their cab and mic, and they sometimes they just don't sound good. They're out of phase, or they sound real nasally. They might have sounded good to the person who was creating it on their playback system, but a lot of times it just sounds awful. And so this lock feature, by locking the cabinet, and if you go to the cabinet and you go to the profile that you're on, let's just pick this one. If you click on this cabinet, you can see right here the IR, or the cab that's being used. Also, it's in the name, in the list. So you find an IR that you like, you put it in a profile, you lock this cabinet, and then no matter what profile you load, if I load up this one, it's going to use that cab. It won't use the cabinet that the person who made the profile is using. And it's literally just as easy as double clicking on these. And you can see how when the little headphones here show up, that's the profile that's being used. So you can also use the right arrow key on your keyboard, and it will just cycle down to the next one, or the left arrow key will cycle up. So it's very easy to be, using your guitar and auditioning all these different profiles. And the cool thing about the lock feature is, like, I've got this guy's profile loaded up, or this guy's profile, and none of my settings change. Nothing. All my effects are the same. My IR is the same. All these effects are the same. If you don't want to do that, you can unlock all these And you can either, like I said, hold the lock button in. If I hit the effects button on my Kemper, you'll see all the locks right here turn off and all the locks turn back on. That's by holding down the lock button on the device and hitting the effects button, or I can hold down lock and click on the individual blocks on the device and lock and unlock them. Or I can literally just come in here and unlock everything. So if I unlock all these and then load up a profile, you can see right now that these are all the effects that I like to use. If I load this profile, all of these change. These all now have changed to whatever effects that user stored in their profile. And this can be another frustrating thing when you're trying out the Kemper, because you might not like any of these effects that this person used. Right? It might sound terrible. It doesn't sound like what you want it to sound like. So that's why I will usually just make up my own profile, store all of the settings that I like, and then I'll just save it to every single profile. So if I go down to this one, it's the exact same. Even the graphic EQ that I had, I've just stored it. And all this is a high cut and a low cut on the entire profile. That way they're all stored. And then I can go through and lock all these again. I'm going to lock it on the device because it's just easier to lock them all. So I'm going to lock all of the stomps. I'm going to lock all the effects. And then I'm literally just going to lock the cab. And now all of these effects are locked in place. And no matter what profile I load, they all stay the same. And I think that has got to be my favorite thing about the Kemper, period. So you can also take down here these presets. I think that's something new. These are effects or different things that if you were to take one of these effects and change all the settings, you can save just this effect as a preset. And then you could pull that up and load it. I haven't really done a whole lot with this, but one thing that I have done with it is taken the cabinets piece of this. So you can sort this by preset class, and then you can see, so I'm on my actual profiler right now on the device. These are all of the cabinets that are stored on the actual profiler, and these are some of the ones that I've put on myself. But these are all the effects, all the cabinets, and these are the ones that are physically stored on the profiler. Well, you can come down to the same thing here for presets that you do with rigs and store them here. So I just use this local library. I could probably made up a new folder here and made up a cabs folder, but I don't really store hardly anything on here in terms of other effects. I just store cabinets in here. So if you had IRs, you can literally just drag them from wherever you have them saved. Like I've got a couple in here. Oh, just take this as an example. It's as easy as going to the folder that holds the IR that you want, and then just dragging it, literally dragging it over here, and now it's in your local library. So it probably would be a good idea, I think I might just do that now. Call this cabs, and then take all of these, copy, paste, and then I can delete them from here. And now they're all stored in here. And so if anytime I do something like that, if I make big changes like that, I'll do this and make a backup. And now if I ever had to restore anything, I have a backup. But that's how easy it is to load IRs on here. You literally just drag them right over to whatever folder you want under these presets, and then you can use that IR. And then you could sort them by name. So you can kind of see how even on presets, it might be a good idea, unless you like to do them a certain way, to name these whatever you want. So you can also take the cab block from some other person's profile. Like, let's say I really like this cab. I really like the way this guy's cab sounds. I don't know if I do or not, but let's say I do. I'm going to unlock the cabinet, and then I'm going to double click on this profile. Let's see if I click down here on cabinet. You can see that's using my IR. Now I'm going to double click on this, and it should load that guy's cabinet right there. So now this is using that cabinet. Well, if I come back here to my cabs folder, I can just take this cabinet block, drag it up in here, and now I've got that cabinet. I'd have to name it something. You know, I could probably name it whatever it was in that profile. You know, I think that sometimes this has a bug in it where it doesn't put the name in, so I'm going to delete this real quick and go back to that. I don't remember which one I was on. Let's try this one. I can't remember why it doesn't. Yeah, see, this didn't update the name either. That's bizarre. Now it did. See, I think this is a little buggy. But anyway, you could take this cab now, drag it up here. Yeah, see, it's not naming it what it is. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, you can name it right here. There you go. You can see this thing's a little buggy. Anyway, so you could take other people's IRs and drag them off of this cabinet block and drag them up into your cab section, and then you could double click on this and it would load that cabinet into the profile or go back. But you have to have this block unlocked in order to do that. So I usually use the same exact IR on just about all my profiles because I really like the way it sounds, like I said before. And so now if I've got this cab block unlocked, I just load up another profile and it's going to put that block back to what it is. I think this is a little bit buggy because I didn't see that change the first time. Anyway, then I'll lock this back. So, like I said, these are little tips and tricks that you could use. I'm not going to talk about performances because I really never use this. But these presets are really cool in terms of being able to use the different cabinets, or like these are all preset packs that come with the Kemper. And if you sort it by class, it makes it a little bit easier to find what's out there. So hopefully this helps you. I know this stuff can be, when I first started using this, I absolutely hated this Kemper because I was used to using an Axe-Fx and a Helix, and I didn't really enjoy this until I started profiling my own amps, and now I love it. It's practically the only device I use. I'll even profile like on my FM3, I'll make profiles of that, and they are exactly the same. I think it's because you're going from a digital device to a digital device, but it's almost impossible to tell the difference between those. So if you have presets in your FM3 or in your Helix that you like, and you profile that thing into the Kemper, it is spot on. Amps, I think when you do amps in here, they are incredibly close. I think sometimes the amp sounds just a little bit sweeter than the profile, but it's very negligible. In a mix, you'll never ever notice it. And if you're monitoring it on monitors, it's very hard to notice. It's only when I listen to them in isolation on headphones that I can really pick out kind of the nuance of the amp versus the Kemper profile. And if you switch between them enough, you could get confused as to which one's which. It's that good. So anyway, hopefully this helps. I would tell you that making backups of your Rig Manager content is probably the best thing you could ever do, if you ever have a problem with your Kemper or your computer or anything, restoring this from scratch is as easy as doing restore rig manager content, and everything will come back here. Maybe quickly the rig exchange. So when you first load up Rig Manager, it will go out and download all of these rigs off of the rig exchange. It takes a while. You'll see it spinning and loading. But there are some really, really good profiles out here. I usually sort this by date. So this shows like the date added. And the cool thing is, like with this lock feature, you can lock your IR in, you can lock all your effects in, and then you can just double click on these and load them and play them. So it's really, really nice. But once you find like an author, you find a cabinet or you find a profile that you like on here, and you want to store it, you just drag it over. So like this guy right here, this particular author, he makes some incredibly good profiles. So if you can search the Rig Manager or Rig Exchange for just about anything. So like that guy, if I search this you start to find his name here, and then you can sort this by author, and you can get all of his profiles. And like I said, he's got some pretty decent ones out there. The same thing holds true. Like that's where I have only, I think, bought a handful of profiles. I think I bought this Top Jimmy Brown Eye, and it's still searching off of this. And it wasn't that good. I mean, it was okay, but like I said, a lot of it comes down to the IR that they use or the cabinet and mic that they chose to shoot the profile with. And I don't know. That's what put me off on the Kemper big time, because these just sound weird. They sound different. I think I bought some of these Senmix ones. This one's actually really good. And then these reamp zones, I felt kind of ripped off on these. And that's kind of what put me off on actually buying profiles. You find the right person on the Rig Exchange. This guy's also really good. And you could see he does his direct. Like there's no cabinet. And dude, these things are really good. So this guy, this Bommel, he's got good profiles. Pretty much any kind of amp you want, you can find profiles by different authors on the Rig Exchange, and they're just as good, depending on the person who created them. There's a lot of crappy ones out there too. But yeah, here you go. This dude, I went out and practically grabbed all his profiles because they were so good. So anyway, the Rig Exchange has a ton of good content on it. It just takes searching around. And like I said, I don't keep a bunch of profiles on here. I mean, if you want to store 1,000 profiles on your device, I don't know why anybody would do that, but you can, I think. I think it takes a lot longer for it to boot up if you do that. Anyway, hopefully this helps you out. Like I said, this thing can be a little, and I've only scratched the surface. I didn't even get into any of the, editing any of the blocks. You can play around with that. I really don't. I mean, I get them sounding the way I want, and then I pretty much leave them alone. Oh, maybe the last thing here, this output block, if you hit that, you can drag this bar up, and then you can see all of the settings for the output. I will usually link all of my volumes together so that I've got, I can just turn the master volume knob, and it turns, the volumes are evenly matched between all the outputs. You can change the settings for any of these outputs on the Kemper. This direct output, this thing is also really powerful. If you set that to guitar analog, it is just the dry, unaffected signal, and this is what you use to profile. You plug this into the front of your amp, and then your Kemper just sends a dry, unaffected signal out. So if you want to reamp anything, you plug that into your DI, and then no matter what you're doing, your master output, now why do I have that in mono? I must have been messing around with this. But you can take this direct out, plug it into your DI, and get a totally pure signal that you can use to reamp. Let's set this back to stereo. I must have been doing something with the main outputs. So like output 1 and output 1, the XLR is out. You can use that. You can change, and some of these things like guitar and processing, I wish you could do this direct analog thing off of all the outputs, but it only works off this direct output one. Make sure you turn off all this pure cabinet and space. This stuff will make your profiles sound terrible. It's something that they have in here for like for headphones, or to make it sound like an amp in the room. It sounds awful. I just turn it off and leave it off. But linking all these, with this button right here is a nice thing to be able to do. You can do all this stuff from the Kemper itself too, but it's a lot easier when you can see it here and manipulate it. And then on the input block, same kind of thing. It's got a noise gate that you can do, but I'll usually put my own noise gate on here. It's a little bit better, but the noise gate that's on here is not bad either. And then the amplifier block, you have all these different settings for it as well. Once I get a profile set up, I'm telling you, I don't usually screw around with any of this stuff, because I can 9 times out of 10 get a profile to sound the way I want it to sound after I refine it. But all these settings are available to tweak. Same thing on the cabinet. Here's that pure cabinet thing. I turn all this crap off. The output block, though, is being able to manage it from here is a lot easier. You can just see all the different settings in one place and change it on your computer. So hopefully this helps you out. I hated the Kemper for a long time. I sold it. I traded one for a Mark V. Actually, I bought a Mark V, traded it for a Kemper, and then I was devastated. I hated the Kemper. I sold the Kemper, and I ended up buying my Mark V back from the guy who sold it to me a year later. And then I ended up getting another Kemper, profiled my amps, and I was like, I get it now. I understand why people love these things. Because you can, if you like using a bunch of different amps and having them saved, and double click one and load it up and take profiles of a bunch of different settings. So you come down one day and your amp sounds fantastic and you love the way it sounds. You make a profile of it. 2 weeks later, you think, man, that doesn't sound very good, but I know it did the day I shot it. The same thing holds true with your amp sometimes. You might listen to your amp one day and love the way it sounds, not touch it at all, come back a couple weeks later and listen to it and think, man, is there something wrong? This doesn't sound right. I think that's just human ears or hearing. Some days these amps sound great. Other days I don't like the way they sound, and I literally didn't change anything. Well, now if you profile them when you like the way that they sound, you can go back and pull those profiles up at any point in time. And what I've found is that, over time, if I make profiles, I'll find the ones that sound good all the time. Like this one in particular is one that I just absolutely love. And my amp is packed up and sitting with the cover on it. So I don't have to worry about tube life or any of that stuff. Does the actual amp sound just a tiny bit sweeter? Probably. But it's so negligible. I could break the amps out and play them whenever I want, but it's so easy to be able to load this stuff up, change all the effects. The effects in here are really good. I don't care what anybody says. These effects sound fantastic. And you can experiment with those using these presets. There's a ton of presets in here for effects. Like if you sort it by category, a bunch of these delays sound good. A ton of the reverbs in here are really good. You just have to kind of mess around with them and find out, which one you like, how they work. And you can put them in these blocks. You'll never run out of CPU. Your Kemper will never turn off effects to save CPU. You only have this amount of blocks though, but I mean, once you get it set up the way you like it. Maybe I'm simple. Anyway, storing rigs. So you could take one of these. You can come down here and make a duplicate of it. You can store it in the rig library, or you can hit store and overwrite it. You can also do everything we just talked about from the device itself. And even though it's got that little tiny screen on it, it's very, very easy to use this thing from the device once you get used to where everything is and how it works. So anyway, man, hopefully this helps you out. Take it easy.